Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. And I know the guy you're looking at does not look like Phil or Scott, but that's because he's not. We're got Dr. Detective Troy Looney, who is launching a show on our second channel, which is called True Crime Talk, the best talk in all of true crime. Today, we're going to focus quite heavily on Maddie Soto's mother, Jen Soto, and I am searching for my notes on all of this, which seem to have disappeared, which is going to make it incredibly fun to do an entire show with none of my show notes, but it's never stopped me before as I continue to look here. Oh, here we go. This looks like it might be it. So Phil Waters called me, being the gentleman that he is, to let me know that he is running late. And why is Phil running late? Because his car battery died. Immediately, I said, was it the Ferrari? To which he laughed and said, no. It's funny because I told Troy, and Troy said, I hope it wasn't a Ferrari. But
Right.
everyone, there's Black Widow saying hello to Troy. She comes to us from the Republic of Ireland, Dr. Detective. You guys need to get used to Dr. Detective because, as I said, the second channel is coming. We're actually launching the first show, the official first show that's not the COE or me. Happy Friday to Space Coast on the West Coast. I told Troy, Dr. Detective, that Fridays are a little crazy. Yet he apologized because he said, what did you call me? Nutty? Nutty.
Right. Yes, I did. Yeah.
No,
Your own words, right?
Yeah, I can definitely be a little nutty, and today will be no exception, I don't think. COE. I love you out there. She's I told her she needs to check her text messages and answer her phone. She didn't like that. So COE, you got to answer your phone and check your text messages. Annie K, hey STS or Joel Troy says thank you. Hello everybody. So anyway, long story short, Phil should be hopping on in a second, but we covered a story last night that I thought was really interesting. And I still do. It is this guy, Suchir Bajali. He's a 26-year-old young man from Cupertino, California. Born, I found out, in Florida, but lived in Cupertino, California. He started speaking in complex sentences at the age of 2, and at age 13, he built his own computer, and then he won all these awards, like monetary awards, because he was so smart. Anyway, he goes to work for OpenAI, which is really known as ChatGPT right now. And he got disillusioned because it was supposed to be OpenAI. Now it's for profit. And he claimed that they were stealing content. And long story short, he blew the whistle and spoke to the New York Times. And then back in November, he winds up dead. Troy, what do you think of the story? I mean, we had the journalist on last night from the San Francisco Examiner, whose name is also Troy. But I mean, I think it's a really compelling story, and I'm questioning a lot of what we're being told. Are you feeling the same way a day after covering that?
Absolutely. Again, the first thing that stood out about our show was the 40 minutes that, the PD spent at the location. Again, not to criticize them. I can only go from experience and having responded and investigated multiple events of persons being unalived and a variety of cases, thousands of cases. Once we respond to a scene, it just it takes time to make sure you're not missing anything, make sure you're vetting and covering all bases. Again, holding the scene initially from patrol to detectives to the medical examiner to a variety of other agencies that may assist, right? So, and then just gathering all the witnesses, making sure you're doing things methodically, and just again, really not missing anything and trying to determine what happened, right? So there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, and you guys are always being investigators are very thorough. Anyway, we're going to stay on that story. It's starting to build momentum. Very quickly, just so Phil's on his way is the short of it. Scott has a teaching commitment. Next week it should be back to FIL and Scott. So obviously we appreciate Troy being here, and then Troy's going to kick off his show on the second channel. And again, I think Doug McGregor's show, the COE, is going to redirect everybody straight there after this show. And you'll be able to see Doug's first show on geoprofiling. It should be pretty cool. I'm excited to check it out. Quick couple of programming notes. So next week on Tuesday, I was invited to interview Gabby Petito's mom, Nicole Schmidt, and her husband, who's Gabby's stepfather. They have a big Netflix documentary coming out on February 17th. And so she is going to be interviewed by myself and the host of the Jury Duty podcast, Kimberly Bell and Lindsay Gandy. And so I'm looking forward to that. On Tuesday, we're going to simulcast the stream. On that same day, earlier, I booked a woman named Jan Broberg. Do you guys know Jan Broberg? If you ever saw a documentary, Abducted in Plain Sight, she was kidnapped twice by the same guy. It's a crazy story. And she asked my mom and I to be on her show on Monday, and I'm reciprocating. And she's coming on our show on Tuesday. So get ready for that. And then Thursday, I'm back with Jury Duty Podcast. We're collaborating a little bit because they've been working on a story about a woman who is missing and the husband charged with murder. Her name is Mamta Bhatt, Mamta, second name Bhatt, in the Washington, D.C. Area. And I don't know. Canine Catherine saying, how are we ever going to get anything done? I don't know. This is the second channel, True Crime Talk. And look at this, Donna just subbed to the second channel. We're already over 10,000 subs on that channel. And yes, we are coming in hot. McSpunky here. No rest for the wicked. And there we go. So let's talk Maddie Soto on this Friday. CO, give me a sign of life. Like, let me know you're there and you're good. The number of crime cases is mind-numbing. This is true, according to Andy K. Joel, why no Karen Reed? I am just, honestly, I don't know that I want to cover it. I'm hung up. The COE said we should cover it, but it's such a toxic story. So many content creators have jumped on it because it's so polarizing, and I just don't like it. I don't know. I just do not like the toxicity. It is just, every time I do a show on that, I could care less that I get the hate mail. It's just like annoying because like both sides are yelling equally loudly that the other side are a bunch of idiots. So yeah, so I don't know. Debbie Gibby is this is KR is a toxic case. I'm sort of interested in it, but I I don't know. I just don't want to deal with it. I just don't care that much. Won't say who, but there's some content creators whose entire lives depend on that story. I mean, that's it.
Well,
And I just don't want a part of it. Anyway, Troy Looney's like, are you ever going to talk? So this is let him talk. I mean, I don't shut up, but there she is, Maddie Soto. Now Stephan Sterns, who's this pretty horrible human being right here, and the mother, and you see him in picture with Maddie. So he's Jen Soto's boyfriend, right? And back on February 26th of last year, Maddie goes missing. She was supposed to show up at school, and she doesn't show up. And lo and behold, 2 days later, they arrest Jen's boyfriend, Stephan Sterns. And 2 days after that, very sadly, they find this 13-year-old girl who had her whole life and then some ahead of her They find her in a rural part of Osceola County, and they think that the boyfriend is definitely responsible. It's been a ton of digital evidence, aka photographs, collected, and the case is sort of also turning into a bit of a disaster from a prosecutorial standpoint, because the sheriff accidentally put out, the office at least put out on Instagram a photo of her deceased body by quote unquote accident. And so now that sheriff is on something called the Brady list, which is basically for law enforcement officials who are tainted. Do you have anything like that in Ohio, Dr. Detective? This is a sheriff in Florida that, for whatever reason, the office accidentally puts out a photo of this young girl's deceased body. He had to apologize, but now he's been put on this thing called the Brady list. And so he might be prevented from testimony, or his deputies could be, and it's a real mess for the prosecution.
I do know that there's a thing called a Brady hearing, where as it ties into like witness impeachment and so forth. So yeah, that sounds like a terrible incident that's taking place. I don't see how that happens by accident, especially when you have to kind of vet your photos and determine what's going to be even shown to family, even things of that nature. It's very sensitive. The permissions and files that we have are protected. Not every detective can access, like, for example, our persons file versus financial crimes files versus other agencies or other departments. So yeah, that's pretty interesting how that happens. Kind of curious why that took place, and even still, I mean, it's on social media. You have to really be careful what's shared, and especially something of that nature, so sensitive and something so traumatic.
Yeah. So this February 24th, she went missing last February 26th, but this February 24th, at least right now, Stephan Sterns is scheduled to stand trial for the sex crimes, which, by the way, in Florida qualify for the death penalty. Most people don't think it's going to happen, and maybe the trials will be combined. So I'm not like holding my breath for February 24th. But the murder trial is set for, I believe, early September. So what we have today is um, recently released. They're not recent interviews, but recently released. And they're, I believe, police interviews, but also an interview with the Orange County homicide lead homicide prosecutor. And it's interesting because he sat in on the didn't sit in, but he prosecuted the Sarah Boone case, and now he's here on this case speaking to Jen Soto. um Kind of waiting for Phil, but Phil is gonna jump on, and I'm gonna start this with Dr. Detective, who's done plenty of interviews on his own. Before we start rolling the quote unquote tape here, Dr. Detective, this is now a mother whose daughter is murdered, and her boyfriend is charged with the crime. And we know some facts, like right after he was arrested, she calls his parents to say he better get an attorney. And when she's speaking to police, she's got some stories that kind of changed their tune. She's not been charged, but it's a very strange dynamic. So how would you approach this interview with this mother?
Again, so contingent upon who else we've talked to. I definitely would have a lot of compassion for mom. Obviously there's a child that's been lost, and but you still have to look at the totality of everything in play, and just kind of get a feel for who we're dealing with, what kind of dynamics were present in the home. What is the relationship like between her and Stephan, and the child, and any other siblings, or understand there were roommates as well. So
Oh, and Dr. Detective just froze up. So now look at that. He froze up with his eyes
previous
closed.
incidents or reports,
Oh,
even something of
hey,
okay, gotcha.
you froze up for a quick sec, but we're good. Real quick, just getting some breaking news here. Rachel Morin, we all know her. She's the mother
Okay,
of 5. You hearing me okay, Troy? think your Wi-Fi just cut out.
Okay.
But yeah, do you have me, Troy? It's gonna be a long Friday. I'm gonna have Troy go out and try to come back in, and I'll sit here and talk to you. So breaking news: Rachel Moore, the mother of 5, found murdered on the Ma and Pa hiking trail in Maryland. There was a hearing this morning for the defendant, and there was talk of a possible plea deal for that guy. It was rejected. Prosecutors offering no plea deal, and they were asking for a change of venue, and the change of venue denied as well. The evidence in that case is overwhelming, and it is going to be a very rude awakening for the guy who took a life, and now he's going to pay for it with, I'm sure, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Let me see if I can get back to Troy Looney here, as he is trying to get back in. In a minute, I'm just going to start to dance for everybody because I don't know what else to do. Sweden is here. Phil is going to jump in. I know that in a moment, and I've got a ton of tape, but I need the detectives in order to analyze that. So there's Rachel Moore, mother of 5. Thanks, COE. I appreciate it. And COE, can you let me know, are these clips, are they all the ones that say police interviews? Are they police interviews, or I think they're with Will J, correct? It's going to be a long day, everybody. It's going to be a real long day. Yeah, it's with Will J. So now, let's go. There are going to be some funny comments. Where is Phil and Scott? Yes, from the COE. They're labeled. Hey, Doc. Look at this.
Hello. Hey.
Look at this.
Hello.
It's tough to do a show on analyzing police interviews when you've never done a police interview. So thrilled to see Phil, FIL, meet Dr. Detective, Troy Looney.
Hello, sir. Pleasure meeting you.
Phil Waters, have you ever come across...
Good morning, Troy. Good morning, Troy. Good to meet you.
How are you? Pleasure. Nice meeting you, too. Thank you.
Phil Waters, in your storied career, have you ever met another doctor detective?
Well, no, I have not. I can tell you that that I had a case that, in fact, it was the the case that we looked at the interview, and I don't know if I mentioned it then, but Dr. Phil was involved in that and all that stuff, and they tried to make a big deal because he took credit for the confession. And I was asked at the press conference why people confess. And I said, well, I don't know. We'd like to think it's because of our good looks and our charm, but we know it's not that. But I only know in this case that he did not confess to Dr. Phil. He confessed to Detective Phil. So it all worked out.
Right.
There you go. We watched that confession. It was amazing. And people loved it so much, FIL Waters, that they've requested that we do some more of these. So I know you two know the story, Maddie Soto, and the mother is under a spotlight here. And we have, it's not new interviews, but very recently released interviews. And it's not a detective, Phil, and you're also going to be upset because I don't think it's on camera. It's audio. However, it is the lead homicide prosecutor speaking to the mom. And without further ado, I'm going to play this, and then I want to just get your guys' take on this. Nikki Cudd said she loves my Yankees hat. Thank you. Love you right back. Here we go. This is let me make sure this is clip 1. Clip 1. Let's roll it.
Now, is this the first time that you've ever woken up to Stephan trying to put a leash on your dog, or is that something that has occurred before in the past?
I want to say this is the first time. It's not normal for any of us to put the leash on the dog on the bed, because if he's on top of any, like, bed, couch, anything, he'll pee. He gets really nervous. You have to do it on the floor. So I found it really weird that he did that, but.
All right, so let me ask it a little more broadly. Is this the first time Stephan's ever come into your room while you're sleeping to take the dog out for you in the morning?
I can't recall if we saw him before.
Okay. Did you find it unusual then, or what did you think when this is occurring?
When it happened, I think I was more. I found it off, but I was more worried over the dog. I was like, please don't pee on the bed. I don't want to do laundry.
Okay.
I'm going to hold it right there. We've got a bunch of clips like this, but Phil Waters and Dr. Detective Troy Looney. This is the homicide prosecutor, Will J., who happened to prosecute the Sarah Boone case also. He's asking the questions. Again, it's not on camera, obviously, but he's asking about the morning of, and apparently the morning that Maddie Soto allegedly went missing. Now, we also know from roommate testimony that apparently the night before, Stephan Sterns had a power drill and a hammer. He was making noise. He was acting all strange. Phil, I not that I got to know this guy, but I watched this guy, Will J., in person in a courtroom, and he's all business all the time. He wears funny socks, which I tweeted about, but that's another story. But he's all business all the time. Short, terse questions. What do you make of his style just off the bat? I know he's not a homicide detective. He's a prosecutor. And also, it's interesting, just starting with putting a leash on the dog. To me, I'm kind of like, why are they bringing that up? What's the relevance? What do you think the relevance is? Phil Waters.
It's a little difficult to give you a really. Were you talking to me or talking to Troy?
You.
Oh, okay.
You.
Okay.
Uncle Phil. I was talking to Uncle Phil.
Don't want to make. Okay. So I just want to make sure that all the haters are waiting for me to make a mistake in their mind.
Gotcha.
So it is a little difficult to comment on specifics because I don't have any context, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
It would be, and of course, we don't have the video, so we don't know the setting. We don't know how the room was set up. We don't know where he is, where she is, that kind of a thing. In terms of the questions that he's asking, and he's asking some open-ended questions, but then he kind of starts out with asking the close-ended stuff, which is just easy to, because you'll notice that when, at least in this little blip, when he asks her an open-ended question, she has to stop and think about the answer that she's going to give.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Right.
So to me, and again, having no context for where they are in this interview, just in what we're hearing, to me, and if I'm looking at it, and of course I would want to see your body language and that kind of a thing, but it sounds as though instead of just answering the question, she's trying to frame the answer. And for me, sitting in that room talking to somebody who does this, that starts to lean toward whatever's coming out next is going to be vague, which it is, which is what she's doing, or it's going to have a level of deception. So she doesn't want to answer the specific open-ended question until she thinks about what she wants the answer to be. And that's a problem for her. And I would assume that the detective in here is picking up on that based on what he's going to start asking her later on. And then he may circle back around and ask her the same set of questions for the same incident that he's talking about, that part of the leash, the dog, peeing on the floor, whatever that is, in a just a different way, and see if she answers in a different way. So, but that's, again, it's really hard to give you a proper one, a proper evaluation of that based on the context of the thing. So
you gave us a lot there, Uncle Phil, and I wasn't thinking about a bunch of this stuff, including Martina's comment. Dr. Detective Troy Looney, does the mention of the leash point to strangulation? It didn't even occur to me. I was just thinking that he was trying to get the morning routine down to show maybe that the routine was different on this particular day. I have no idea if the leash was used. But Dr. Detective, what about Phil's point about open-ended questions? Like when you go into interviews, can you give me an example of a question or two that you typically will ask?
Sure, absolutely, and very well stated, by the way. What came to mind for me is like the DA or prosecutor asking questions. There may be some context with, and I'm speculating because we don't have the scene, we don't have the evidence, but there's something he's trying to obtain or answer from her. Um, when you're talking about open-ended questions, it would be more so of tell me about the morning or tell me about what was taking place. Not so much leading that person unless you're presenting like a theme to them or something specific. The interesting dynamic about as investigators, we have a lot of the evidence and we know certain details that only the investigator should know versus everyone else. So we can kind of vet tips that come in, statements that are made, or lies that are told, right? So as this Uncle Phil said, if I can call you that, so um, respectfully, there's a lot of deception potentially that's could take place, or her having to think about it, and then you're trying to also lock a person into, a time frame, the timeline, anything that doesn't add up. So it's just contingent upon looking at everything.
Um, I mean, it's just fascinating to me, just the psychology of all this. Peggy here says, even if Jen never gets arrested and is held accountable, she's going to have to live with her conscience. Her reputation is pretty much ruined. I don't want to be mean, but I'm not sure how much of a conscience she has. She seems to operate at a very shallow level. Like I think about every aspect of my life in way too much detail, where I think she's the polar opposite on the spectrum. But and in fairness to Phil, I just did. I mean, this kind of does come right out of context, and there's not a lot of context here. But we're going to listen and hopefully learn some. So let me play out the rest of this clip, and we'll get their take.
So I was more anxious over that. He put the dog on the leash and told me to lay down and go back to sleep. And I said, okay.
So were you not laying down when he tells you to go back and lay down?
No, when he put the leash on the dog, I shot off the bed because I was going to help him. I was like, no, let me do it. And he's like, no, go back to sleep. I'm fine. I got this.
Okay.
I said, okay.
Now, do you go back to sleep or do you check your phone or do anything?
I think I go back to sleep. I can't look at anything.
In this period of time that you have been awoken by Stephan, do you hear or see anybody else in your household?
I hear somebody in the kitchen. I'm not sure who it was. I'm not sure who it was.
Okay.
Phil Waters, I mean, right there, it's what do you make of that answer? She's suddenly got kind of a bout of, I guess, amnesia. She just doesn't recall, like she's giving answers, and then it like just abruptly stops there, where she's like, it looks like what you were saying, like she was searching for a way to describe it.
Well, my first question here is, what's the significance of this dog leash and all that? I don't have a context for it. I mean, why is the detective on this? Is he trying to get Stephan's movements or what? What's the context of the discussion about the dog leash?
I'll be honest. This is taken a little bit out of context, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's to figure out his movements the day that the morning he says she went missing, like, and to see if like his behaviors fit the same pattern as other days. But apparently this is a day where he decides to leash up a dog. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, well, what I'm taking away, at least from this little bit of the discussion, is that he's asking her a question about the dog leash and where Stephan is, but she's framing her answers about where she was. So she's not really answering his questions in the manner in which he would like them answered. And this may be purposeful. Again, I don't have any context. I don't know how this interview started and why it headed this direction, but it sounds to me, I mean, and this may be purposeful on the part of the detective, that he is going through this scenario of the turd and the dog and the leash and her, and where does it fit in? It sounds like he's either trying to develop or he has developed a timeline, and now he's trying to get her to fill in the spots of where he was and where she was, and somehow this dog and the leash and all that is connected in that timeline. And that's just my impression from these little clips. I may be completely off, but that's what it sounds like.
Let me play out the rest. There's like 4 others after this, so let me play this one out.
Could you identify it by size, like their steps? Could you identify gender by their voice? Anything like that?
All I heard was sounds of like cabinets shutting, like somebody in there shutting, like looking for something and shutting.
Okay. Now, if your daughter had been awake, would she come in and say goodbye to you before school, or not? Just let you sleep?
I would have hoped she would have come by and say goodbye to me. I can't remember if this is one of the first times that Stephan actually took her to school, so I would have hoped she would have said good night, but I'm not sure.
All right, so do you fall back asleep?
I do.
And when do you wake up, and how do you wake up?
I wake up at like 9 o'clock in the morning to my alarm. I wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning to my alarm. I get ready. I think at around 9:30, 9:45, I leave for my doctor's appointment.
Okay. So in this period of time from when you're waking up and getting ready, do you see anybody else in your home?
At this point, I'm not too sure.
All right, so that's this first part about the morning. What's interesting, Dr. Detective, she says this is the first time he's ever taken her to school, and it's the day she goes missing. I mean, that to me is a red flag, but you're the detective. Then she basically just says, I go back to sleep. I mean, I guess in fairness to her, maybe at this point she doesn't know what has happened or what is about to happen. Some people think that she was maybe killed hours before all this even. So it's still up in the air. But then towards the end, Dr. Detective, when he's asking about what time she wakes up, she's like, I woke up at 9. And then she's like, really takes a long pause. And then she's like, I think I woke up at 9. How do you read this part of this section of this interview?
Again, so that's very interesting because it doesn't, some of those answers, it wouldn't take that long to consider. The approach with the questioning also is it's somewhat close-ended, like Phil said. A better way to ask, not to criticize them, but I would have approached it like, tell me what happened next. You have to allow them to talk, right? And
this guy is a homicide prosecutor. I mean, would they, Dr. Detective, have a different approach, or no, they shouldn't?
I'm not going to say different. It's more of a collaborative, but there are certain answers or statements he's looking for. There's something he's looking to lock her into, and it could be based upon the evidence, could be based upon things that we know or that they know already. But I mean, obviously, even if we know a person's being deceptive, we're going to allow them to talk. So he's somewhat leading her down a pathway of, the timeline and so forth. But clearly, we can all see that certain answers are not you shouldn't have to think about, especially with your child, and the magnitude of what's taking place. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I've been corrected by detectives in certain interviews where I was interviewing a murder suspect, and I wanted to ask, I was anxious to get certain questions out, and the detective literally wrote on a notepad, "Let him talk," right, and like angled it so he couldn't see it, suspect, but so I'm like, okay. And this was a more seasoned detective at the time, so I've learned a lot, and you learn by trial and error, right? So, yeah, you have to let the person talk and kind of leave it open ended. Well, tell me what happened next. Tell me more about that. Maybe even elaborate on certain questions.
Yeah. Phil Waters, have you ever given a note to a younger detective saying, "Let them talk"? I have a feeling that back in the day, Phil Waters, you were always a sweet guy, but maybe you would have a couple of words with fellow detectives about how to handle things. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I certainly would offer anything I could to put them in the right direction. I was an instructor, and in fact, my partner and I taught interview classes that were required at the Houston Police Department for anybody in investigations, and then of course any officer could take those classes. But and I've been corrected. So let's as I'm like Troy. I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
We don't all start out with X number of years of experience, and you gotta do it. You got to be in it to get there. So I was very fortunate. I had some mentors in Homicide in Houston at HPD that were amazing, and I would credit them with any of the attributes that I was able to bring into my interview process and that kind of thing. I attribute a lot of those to them. But interviewing, number one, it's an art, and you have to practice it and practice it the right way to get better at it. It's not one of these things. I've had, I don't know how many people I've had in my classes that they're good BSers. They can sit around and they can shoot the bull from now to the second coming, but that doesn't make them good interviewers. And in my mind, I'm thinking about one in particular who was great at establishing the relationship, great at talking in the room, but didn't know how to close it out. And then what ultimately would happen is, in many, many cases, the person he's interviewing would begin interviewing him. And we used to watch him when he was in the interview room and started taking bets. At what point in time does the interviewee become the interviewer? So, I will tell you that when I teach my classes, I don't go in there and say, "Look, I'm trying to turn you into little Phils. We got enough of me to go around." Probably too much, but what I am telling them is that they may not be great interviewers at some point in time, but if they'll listen to the training and they will apply it, they will be better interviewers. And that's the goal. And I tell you what, and the biggest victory I guess I can get out of that training is when I get some young patrol officer who calls me up and said, just got their first confession. Because I tell them, I said, talk to whoever it is, whatever you're doing. If it's some crack pipe arrest, talk to that person, interview that person, get to know them, get a relationship, find out where did the cocaine come from? Where did you get the crack pipe from? I mean, interview them to hone those skills. And getting that phone call, and it works. I got it. Yes. Boom, boom, boom. And that's exciting because they will build on that. And because they realize that the training they receive, it does work. And they can apply it that way. So now I think you just said that in this case, this is not a homicide cop. This is some
right. This is a homicide prosecutor. Correct.
Okay. Well, that's the first mistake in the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
There, Troy was very magnanimous there, and it was not going to be critical. Well, I'm not, and I am. Okay. So that is the worst person in the world to put into an interview room to interview a person who is either going to be a witness or a suspect. And that's a bad decision made by
why is that the worst person and not the second?
Because those lawyers, those prosecutors cannot talk to people.
That's correct.
I got to tell you something. What's interesting that you said that. He's a very effective prosecutor, but I tried to talk to him, and he literally is he just is completely walled off. I mean, you're 100% right. It was weird. And the other prosecutor,
I'm not criticizing his ability to be a prosecutor.
Oh yeah.
He probably is.
No, I'm just telling you, he really is.
From my own experience, that the hot rod prosecutors that we had in Harris County, and they were good. I mean, they were good. They were top notch. And, but do I want them to interview one of my suspects? Absolutely not. Do I want them interviewing my witnesses? Absolutely not. And I'm just telling, because I've been through it. I've been through talking to witnesses, talking to suspects who have been interviewed by people at the DA's office. And this is a true story. I have had a number of them that would say to me, and it was my partner talking to them, why didn't you guys come and talk to us? Because those lawyers don't know how. And they're right. And so, so it makes sense to me now that the series of these questions, most of them are close-ended. And then he'll ask some little open-ended thing at the end of it. And he doesn't pick up, he missed an opportunity here when she started, like Troy was talking about, when he started talking about, when she started saying something about, this is the first time he's ever taken the dog out or taken her to school, whatever that was. And then he just goes on to, well, okay, so then tell me what, he misses that. Oh my gosh.
Right.
If I'd have heard that in the interview room, her saying that, I'd have said, really? I said, well, tell me about that. What is the routine when she goes to school? Tell me about what happens in the house. What's the dynamic in the house? What are you doing? What's he doing? And this and that. And why did you find it? And how strange did you find it that he was now wanting to take her to school? So missed opportunity. And there were a couple things she said in that little clip that I would have expounded on the minute she said it to get closer to where he is, where her daughter is, where she is, and that kind, where the dog is, for that matter. But missed opportunities there. But now that's explained because who is doing the interview, I think.
Yeah. By the way, there's a little more context. So if you look at Beach Blessings, it was a use immunity interview, so she's being careful with answers. Someone's asking if the prosecution has to be there with immunity on the table, followed by this. The immunity deal was for not lying in this interview, which she failed.
Well, that may be the case, but that lawyer, that prosecutor can be sitting at a monitor and doing the same thing. He does not need to be in the room, and he's not the person that should be conducting the interview. And I that may make some people mad, but I'm just telling you from a homicide cop's perspective, he's the last person you want in that room. And I have had DAs who do want to get in there, and I would not allow them. What did I do with them? I put them at the monitor and let them watch. And then if they had a question, then that would get communicated to me to ask that question. But I'm just, from my perspective, that is a bad way to conduct an interview. I don't care what the purpose was. That's a bad way to conduct an interview.
Idaho Spud Girl, too bad your guest didn't get to interview her. Probably would have had much better results. Phil Waters is a humble man, F-I-L Waters, not to be confused with Phil Ramos, P-H-I-L. But and Phil will blush when I say this, but he had a show called The Interrogator, and he hated the name because he likes to call it an interview. But Phil is a legend in the world of homicide detectivery. He teaches classes all over the world.
I hate that.
It's true. Might not like it, but it's true. I mean, Phil literally teaches this. So, and he's excellent. Not to say that Dr. Detective is not. I think Phil, I don't know. He just was able to be incredibly. What was your confession rate, Phil?
I'm sorry?
What was your criminal confession rate? Your
90% of 96% clearance rate, 400 homicides and thereabouts, and 90% confession rate.
Troy Looney. I mean, hearing that, those are high. That's a high percentage, right? I mean,
absolutely, yes, outstanding.
I think Detroit at one point was clearing like 15% of their homicides, just to put it in perspective. But
wow.
Well, let me. I hate to interrupt, and I'm giving. I'm giving the haters fuel here, but and it's not because of me, but I want to tell you this: that the teaching of interviewing is, and the way I mean, I've been to all the schools, Reed School. I'm sure Troy, Reed School, the Rhodes School. There's all these different interview schools that have been around for a long, long time.
Right. And
I've been to 3 or 4 of them. And when it comes down to it, body language, eye movement is eye movement. Nonverbal behavior is nonverbal behavior, verbal behavior. So all of those things are the same. What is different about the different schools is the philosophy that they implement those techniques. And what we did, my partner and I, we took all of those different things that we liked about those different things, and we built a hybrid curriculum that put our philosophy about interviewing into it. And ours is more, you hear the term rapport, and what is rapport? So it is, for lack of a better term, it is building a relationship. Now, in our classes, we talk about building relationships, not about building rapport, because rapport, at least in my world, is a very temporary type of relationship. For the moment, you're building a rapport to get a desired result. When we teach, I talk about establishing a relationship, not about establishing rapport, which again, in my mind, is a temporary thing. I'm talking about establishing a relationship that is going to last beyond the interview room. And I know that may sound crazy, but I would tell you what, it will come back around at some point in your career, as it did with me. So it's about relationships. It's about treating everybody with dignity and respect. It is about, and it doesn't matter what flavor you are. I don't care what race, creed, color, orientation, religious backgrounds, ideology. It makes no difference. You treat everyone that same way. And how do you do that? You do that by recognizing what we all have in common. There are three things we all have in common. I don't care. I mean, the three of us sitting right now here, we got a black man, got a white guy, got a Jew. Okay. So we're all the same. We're all different, but we have the same three things that we want to accomplish in life, or that we desire. And that is, we all want to be respected. We all want to be loved. And we all want to take care of those who love and respect us. We just make different decisions about how we accomplish those three things. When you walk into an interview room with that kind of an attitude, you're going to establish a relationship that is going to get that person who has committed, at least in Troy's case, the most horrific act they can. They have taken another human's life by an act of violence. We have to go in there and we have to allow them to trust us, to tell us what they've done and why they did it. And you can only do that by establishing that relationship. So, and it is international. It is international. I taught National Police of Ukraine detectives. I've taught Swiss detectives, homicide detectives. I'm just saying, and agencies all across the country. I'm just telling you that the way I teach my classes, it is international. Everybody can understand what they need to do, and they have to work on it, though. It doesn't just happen. So I've got a 3-day school that I teach. Now I'm going to be up in Delaware in April at Scott's symposium, and I'm going to be giving a 4-hour. I'm going to try to cram 3 days of interview training into 4 hours, which ought to be a real trick. But I'm going to be up there doing that, and with Scott. And so, yeah, it's just people don't understand. People think they know about interviewing, and they don't. People will watch this stuff, and then when I say what I say, of course, I fade the heat, which I don't care, and I look. It's you only get better by giving constructive criticism. And I go through it every time I conducted an interview. I went back and watched the video. I'm my own worst critic. I would get my partner. We would watch. We would look. You only get better by honing that craft and pursuing that art. So, it's always disappointing to me. I watch a lot of these interviews on these shows, and it's always disappointing to me that the detectives put themselves right behind the 8 ball from the beginning. And with the way the room set, everything has a purpose. Everything has a purpose in the interview. The setup of the room, getting prepared for it. I think Troy kind of alluded to that. Knowing you got to know as much as you can. I call them psychological autopsies. You got to know as much as you can about the person you're fixing to go in and talk to, and to be able to establish that relationship. And then you've got to share a little bit of yourself. I mean, you got to, you've got your life lessons you can share with them to get that bond going. So, and I know I've rambled on, and they're gonna, people are gonna,
Friday's a rambling kind of day. By the way, I never share anything personal, but I was at the neck doctor again today. And he looked at my MRI and he went like this. Like, it looks bad. I was like, wow, that's great. Anyway, I need to go to PT. I got a neck issue, Phil. And
that's right. Yeah, your neck injury. Yeah, you were whining about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely whining about it again today. But I need to get an injection. I'm sure I'll never mention another word about it again. But Troy Looney, in this last part, we're gonna go through the other clips faster because we'll never finish the show otherwise. But when she says she doesn't remember if her daughter says goodbye, like every time my kids say goodbye, like it's a special moment for me in the morning because they're, little
Right.
kids. Obviously a 13-year-old. Is that cute? Like if you're in the interview room, are you scratching your head internally there?
Yes, and let me backtrack a minute. I want to say to Phil, I appreciate all the gems that you literally dropped. I want to drop the mic for you because as we were just talking about, let them talk. When it's a legend, you let the legend speak because you learn also. I appreciate that, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon there.
Much respect, Troy. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Likewise, it's a privilege to be here with you all. So, yeah. So what she said, her saying or what she did not say. Of course, if it raises a flag, then you're going to dive deeper into that. Well, tell me, or you could backtrack, right? There's nothing wrong with going back to your original question or another question. So, I want to know more about this. Tell me about the dog. Like, does the dog shed or hypoallergenic or whatever, right? Whatever the case is. So you just kind of engage them, and then most people want to tell you more anyway. It's just whether you ask the right question. Really, just like Phil mentioned, building that relationship. My previous partners and I for working persons in homicide, we built rapport off of someone that murdered someone over a sandwich, literally over an Arby's sandwich. And we working the midnight shift. This guy's intoxicated. It was two fraternity brothers. They got into it. One fraternity brother was kind of a bully and said, I'm going to take your sandwich. And the guy said, if you take my sandwich, I'm going to stab you. Literally, he stabbed him to death. And we got the guy in the interview room, and I built the rapport walking in saying, hey, how's it going? And I always call everybody Mr. or Mrs. Presentation, right? That first interaction, and shake their hand, right? No matter what they've done. Of course, protecting ourselves. But yeah, so this guy, we go into an interview room, and he basically is kind of intoxicated somewhat, but the fact that Arby's was open until 3 a.m., my partner, I didn't know that. So this was over an Arby's sandwich. And he's like, yeah, I'm like, tell me what happened, timeline and so forth. I'll cut to the chase. And he starts talking about, we go to Arby's, it's after 2 a.m. I'm like, what? Arby's is open? My partner and I look at each other and we're like, what? And after that, I'm like, what'd you get? And he's like, oh, I got the roast beef au jus. I'm like, oh, I like the curly fries. Just like that, the guy's talking. He gives us a full confession about what he did. He's sorry about it. And like, what would you tell the family? And that after that, that was just us being real people, because we were, you're limited by where you can eat when it's after midnight, right? So
yeah,
working a graveyard shift. So that alone is just a part of it.
I mean, I think that's actually a great piece of advice for anything is like authenticity. Like,
right.
Again, I don't want to harp on the fact that I love that mainstream news is dying, but I do, because it's become unwatchable to me for a number of reasons. But authenticity, like that's something that really, you see the news reporters, I'm live in at the hurricane, right. And like there. So I think in any profession, any job, if you are authentic, it will come back to definitely benefit you and what you're doing. Does Troy have his own channel? He doesn't have his own channel, but he's got his own show on our second channel, and it's launching very soon. It is Best Talk in True Crime, the True Crime Talk. We have it's complicated. True Crime Talk is the channel, and Best Talk in True Crime is the tagline. Anyway, okay, so Phil Waters, try to keep this relatively short. What is the singular most important trait for a homicide detective in the interview?
Singular most important what?
Trait in the interview room. In the interview room.
Well, if you're going to make me point out a single trait,
yes.
Patience.
Where do you rank listening on that?
So now you're saying I can add another one to it. So the second trait is to listen. And God gave us one mouth and two ears. That's so we can hear twice as much as we say. So when you're in that room, I think Troy kind of mentioned this, as long as they're talking, you need to sit there and listen. I'm not talking about, there's a difference between hearing and listening. I mean, a lot of folks will hear what I say, but they're not listening to what I'm saying. So they come up with their own version of what I'm saying. Now, in that room, you listen, and when they say something that you need to have clarified, then that's what you do. You let them clarify what they just said. And I'm telling you, because you have to be, I would say the other trait, patience, listening, and being empathetic. You've got to be able to show empathy to the person you're talking to. And again, it doesn't matter. Race, creed, color, religion, gender, orientation, whatever flavor they may be, it makes no difference. And I will just, as a quick example, I would say the most challenging interview I ever had was a 29-year-old Muslim Iranian female who practiced Islam. Her first language was Farsi, but she was very, very well-spoken in English. And she had taken her 2-month-old baby boy and buried him alive, and then reported as a kidnapping. I was brought in to interview her. We had a great resource at the Houston Police Department. We had a Farsi-speaking officer who was Iranian, Muslim. He came in, great guy. He did exactly what he needed to do in the course of this interview, was simply interpret and translate, not get involved in the interview. But my point is here is that because of the way I treated her, the way that I showed empathy to her, that I showed concern for her and her situation, it took 3.5 hours to do it, but she eventually took us to the baby. And then I came back the next day and she gave a full confession. Now, and she did a couple of things in that interview process when we were trying to locate the baby, because she was very reluctant to do that. And when we got to that point, and I had left the room a couple of times, there's something I never do, just to let her and Tony have a little one-on-one in there. And then I went back in, and when I went back in the first time, he looks at me and he says, "She knows where the baby is, and she'll take us there." I said, "Awesome." So we got that accomplished, and when we were going to go do it, I told her, explain to her what we're going to go do. And I was proud of her for telling us what she had told us. And I told her, Tony will be coming, and so forth and so on. She looked at me and put her hand on my knee and said, "I want to go with you." Now, I'm telling you, culturally, that would get her head cut off. So I'm not trying to brag here. I'm just trying to express that the way we treat people will get us to where we need to be. And in the settings that Troy and I are in, when we're trying to get the truth, and remember that it's always a journey for the truth. So we let evidence lead us where we need to be. We don't take it someplace we want it to go, and it's always a journey for the truth. And those folks, again, that if you use the philosophy of interviewing with the techniques, that's what at least got me to that point where I could talk to somebody like this, so completely different. I'm a white guy from Oklahoma, Southern Baptist. Okay? You couldn't have found two more divergent people than sitting in that room on that day. So I know that, and that's a short answer for me, by the way. Joel. But yeah,
listen,
and I don't even remember what the original question was, but
I don't either. I don't know.
So it's patience, it's listening, and empathy.
There you go. Okay, so this is the second clip. I'm going to do things differently now. So I'm going to play this out. Dr. Detective, I know you're so polite, but if you want me to stop, say stop it. Phil Waters, okay. Same thing. If you want me to stop, say stop it.
You getting there?
This is Jen talking about her conversation, I think, with her boyfriend, Stephan, I believe.
Or is that where you guys go to talk?
He was hanging out there in my room.
Okay.
My room is kind of like the general hangout spot.
Okay.
I walk into my room. He's sitting there on the computer chair. He's talking, acting normal, asking about the morning and how everything went, and that he let me know the errands that he ran that morning or what he was up to.
And what did he say he was up to?
He said he had dropped Maddie off at school and then afterwards went to a vape shop so he could buy vaping things.
Okay.
But that the store wasn't open, so he waited a long time for them to...
I'm slow on the pause. Thank you.
I'm sorry. No. Again, just wanted to chime in there. So he's trying to build an alibi or timeline, it sounds like, or at least get her on board with, kind of like, I won't say Jedi mind trick her, but potentially, when people are that specific and they're that methodical about their answers, they're trying to maybe place a theme in her head or say, hey, I did this. I don't know many guys that are like that specific about every detail, the vape shop, the store, I got a coffee, I got a burger. So, I mean, it stands out as kind of odd. And for her to remember that also.
And do you think she is remembering it or she's saying something now that was maybe told to her by him? What do you think?
I was going to say, regurgitating. Most likely she's probably doing both. Right. And they could have even, if she's involved, they could have rehearsed that. I don't want to say that, but if that would be the case or it's discovered to be the case, it just sounds like he's really painting a picture for her. Hey, this is what I'm doing. I dropped her off at school. I went here after. And, I've had another homicide I saw, and it was, it was like an inside job where I interviewed someone. And I think there's a course called Is 911, Is the Caller the Killer? And so forth. There's several cases that come to mind there, but the statements that people make, and if it's very choppy, very short, and it just seems, if it stands out as not a normal kind of conversation, it could be deceptive. So yeah, that stood out for me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I want you to do it. Here we go. I'm gonna keep playing it.
Open, they never did. So he drove around, killed time, and then eventually made it back to my house at like 10:20. When later on, when I got home and he was home, we started discussing, or he started telling me that he was going to go back out to run a few more errands in a little bit down 182. And he gave me the name of a few stores that he might stop at. And I'm like, okay. I asked him if he wanted to meet me at my house by 2:30 so that we can go pick up Maddie from school together. And he said, yeah, he'll be back by 2:30. And I said, okay.
So was that the plan, to get her together, or was it ever discussed that he would get her alone?
The plan was for us to get her together.
Okay. All right. And so does he leave before you leave?
Actually, before this, while we were still discussing, while we were having the conversation in my room, he did mention at one point, while he was sitting there, that he had to reboot his phone, or that he had to update his phone. And what was it? He had to update his phone. So I told him, stop avoiding it, do it. Like, it's updates take a while, like, do it. And while he was updating his phone, he said, I don't know what I did, but I just factory reset my phone. And I said, that's weird. I didn't know that you could do that. He said, yeah, a button popped up and I pressed it and it just.
Troy Looney. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure Phil's thinking the same thing. Who just accidentally factory resets the phone, and it goes through several options to do that. So yeah, everything about that is just off. And her being able to remember all of that in detail, that's off also. So I'm gonna call BS. I'm sorry. I know everyone says I'm nice. I got both sides in me, right? I'm gonna call BS on that. So
yeah, I bet you. You ever played the bad cop in the interview room?
Occasionally, yeah, I've done both. Yeah, we're role players also. I mean, we have the compassion and we care, but you still have to meet people kind of where they are sometimes, right? So as Phil said, if it's a crack arrest or whatever the case is, or heroin now and fentanyl, that compassion goes, it changes, or you have to be adaptable, right? So.
By the way, like, she's so monotonous. It's like I kind of like sometimes zone out while she's talking. But Kathy here, which is bad because it's my show, but Jen has changed her story. At first, she said she heard her at 8 o'clock in the morning and saw her. Now it's changed to she hasn't seen her since the night before. That's only one change or one lie. I mean, Phil, that's a pretty big discrepancy in her story, especially since it's her 13-year-old daughter. People have been asking, at the very least, why hasn't this mother been charged with negligence? I know you're not a lawyer, but what about that point?
Well, they don't have enough probable cause to arrest her. That's the big problem here. And this is one of these. I think Troy would agree with me that, look, when you have these events that occur, whatever the setting is, whatever these homicides are, in terms of interviewing people, number one, you give everybody a chance to talk, to be interviewed, everyone. And in most cases, you're only going to get one bite at that apple. Now, I don't know how many interviews has she had when this one is conducted.
I'm sorry. Good question. I know she'd had one, and this is like 4 weeks. It's probably the second.
So my thinking is, and so as each one of these interviews occurs, whether intentional or not, information is being fed to her. And she will start to manipulate the story. That's why she's getting times wrong, because she's making changes, little nuanced changes to the story each time she's interviewed because of something that she's been told. And look, some of the stuff, at least in this little run, my impression is that a lot of it is true. And what's the best lie? You have elements of the truth woven through it. So a lot of things I think she's saying here are probably occurred. But the problem is here is that, and I don't know how they started this interview. I would have started an interview with her with, tell me about you and whatever the turd's name is. I don't like saying their names, but tell me about that. Tell me where y'all met. Tell me this and that and this and that. Tell me about the relationship between Maddie and him. Tell me how that went along, blah, 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 so forth and so on. And then there's going to be some point in time where I'm going to ask her, when did you become aware that the turd was looking at child pornography? When did you become aware that there may be something going on inappropriate between he and your daughter? And you don't want to say things like, you don't want to say trigger words. When did you figure out that your boyfriend was sexually assaulting your daughter, was raping? You don't want to use those kind of words. You don't. In fact, you don't even say things like kill or murder, or you always use the term, a nebulous term like hurt.
Interesting.
When did you fear that your boyfriend might hurt Maddie? Not kill her, hurt her. And so words have meaning, and they have a lot of meaning in that interview room. But in terms of her, I just think at this point, and again, we have no context for this, but it sounds to me like she does have a part of her story where she can communicate it without having to think about an answer, because she's weaving the truth. Stuff really did happen this way. Now she may be getting times off and that kind of thing, but those would be things that you would go back and let's clarify. You said this, and then you said this. So let's clarify what that was about. So,
a couple interesting things came up in the chat, and we got to get through the other videos. We're never going to finish this show. Plus, I have the crazy true crime stories of the week. Troy Looney, what if, I'm sure you're very good at telling if someone is medicated, on drugs, or under the influence in an interview room. I'm sure it's happened. If you do notice that, do you just stop the interview? How do you deal with that?
Again, so one practice that I've always taken is I read everybody Miranda, victims, witnesses. If they're brought downtown, or sometimes even in the field, and we record every interview. Everyone I've talked to, I record it. Even now, even by telephone. So I'll record it. I'll read them Miranda. Contingent upon if they're like heavily intoxicated, if they can't stand up, that's a different thing. I'll wait, or depending upon the type of crime that's occurred, you may have to wait. Like in an SA case, for example, if they're in the hospital, you may have to wait because there's different treatments by the nurses and so forth, and maybe wait until they're not as intoxicated or whatever, or under the influence of whatever. That could have been a roofie situation. But all that being said, there's different signs, right? Body language. Maybe you can smell alcohol or something, or just the behavior, slurred speech, and so forth. So a lot of different things factor in, and maybe you just ask them, "Are you taking medication by under doctor's care? Do you have any kind of medical condition, diabetic, so forth?" Just contingent. So you can always ask those questions, and then you can order or subpoena health records and health history. One thing I want to chime in on what Phil said, thinking about this case, the interesting thing is they are not married. So I know a wife can't be compelled to testify against a husband, but this could be a strategy also, that they're setting her up or building the case so that if you provide immunity, and I'm speculating, but you provide immunity, maybe she'll be the weaker link later to tell more, or maybe add to or be more truthful if she's being deceptive.
Wow, interesting. All right, I'm gonna keep playing this clip here. Here we go.
Reset my entire phone, and I'm like, oh, that sucks.
So does he leave before you do to go do these errands he was telling you about?
Yes, he does leave.
Do you stay at home until it's time to go get Madeline?
Yes.
Do you hear anything from Stephan while he's out doing these errands?
No.
So 2:30 rolls around. Is Stephan back home yet?
No. At this point, I leave.
Do you try and call him, or text him, or communicate with him?
Yeah, I had been calling him, like, maybe starting 15 minutes before I was supposed to leave, just to see where he was.
Did he answer?
No. I leave at 2:30. Around 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from him, and he said, "I'm so sorry, I left my phone at home again on accident. I was driving down 192 and my tire exploded or shredded, and I had to pull over into one of the plazas and change my tire." He said he hurt his thumb doing that, and that he was late and didn't make it back on time for that reason.
That's that clip. There's actually 3 more, so it's quite a bit left. But Phil Waters, to you, he changed his tire and hurt his thumb. Again, to Troy's point, she's given almost too much detail. So now there's a reason that maybe his thumb is hurting. It was because of the changing of the tire, and not potentially because Maddie struck him or something happened while the unaliving was going on. I don't know if you heard anything in that last part of the clip. one of the questions, and I do this all the time, but is say which I just did. Do you notice that in the interview room? And also, people were saying she sighs a lot before answering questions, which is, I guess, a strategy internally for kind of giving yourself time to think. Your thoughts?
Well, Joel, the first thing I would ask is, why did you just do an ass wipe? Are you nervous or something?
Yeah, actually, when I said that, I say and asked if you noticed that. Then I got nervous that you're now going to notice every I say. That's exactly why I did that. Yeah. He's not here. Okay, I've got a STS sweatshirt on. Look, COE ordered.
Okay, all right. I was just curious because in the middle of your
yeah, that's what it was. I'm honest, man.
You look very uncomfortable there for a second. Well, the things that she's saying here can be verified. Now, she's saying that her tire blew up and they had to change the tire. Well, those types of things should be able to be verified. Go to have her, take the location where this happens. Are there any video cameras in that area that we can verify that what you're telling us is true? Because she's trying to explain an injury that he had, right, on his thumb.
Yep.
So she said some things there that a detective should be able to verify, or if cannot be verified, then she's going to have to give a better explanation about what happened. Now, the questions he's at, well, did you call it? I left this and that. Like that again, this is just a series. In my mind, it's a poor series of questions that should be phrased differently to get more information. And she's on a roll. I mean, look, the further into this interview, which I'm assuming is all the same interview, she's getting more comfortable in her narrative. So, and this guy's not asking her I don't think, at least at this point, he's not really asking her any challenging questions that are open-ended that would make her have to give an answer. The yes or no thing, did he show up at 2:30? No. Well, the question should have been, what time did he show up?
Right.
Then she's got to say, well, he never showed up. You want to get more than just these single word answers. You want to get her talking. So, again, I mean, overall, the interview itself is, other than an academic discussion, I don't know that it had much. I don't know. Did they achieve their purpose? I mean, did she talk her way into immunity? Because
I don't think
it's pretty clear to me now that at this point,
I don't think she has.
She's either going to be a witness or a suspect.
Yeah.
And that's what they're interviewing her about. And if this is some sort of an immunity thing, she needs to be full disclosure. She's not being full disclosure. So I don't know if they gave her an immunity deal or not, but based on this, if it were me, I would say you hadn't earned immunity. You need to we got to get it all out on the table here. The good, bad, and the ugly. And this is the deal, because that's the only way you're going to get it.
Interesting. Okay, so this is yet another clip. This has having to do with Jen and Maddie. Again, I'm just going to play it out. If either detective has something they want to point out, just yell at me.
At some point in the morning, I was organizing and putting things away, and I walked into her bedroom and I saw her phone on her dresser. And I just assumed, she must have left it here while getting dressed and forgot it.
Okay. Was it on?
Yes.
And sometimes when you bump or move phones, the notification screen comes up. Did you happen to do that, and did you see if there was any incoming notifications that she had missed?
I hadn't seen any, no.
Okay. All right. So you go to school, and due to time constraints, like an NFL football game, we're going to kind of jump ahead a little bit. My understanding is that you want to be first in line, and you have to get there early to do that, and I understand that.
Yeah.
She doesn't come out.
She doesn't know.
Did you call her phone?
I did.
Why did you do that?
Because I forgot I had it with me. I was like, where is she? Why isn't she out yet? So I start calling her phone, and then I start realizing I'm hearing vibrating, and then I look down, and I see her phone's with me. I'm like, oh, okay. How am I going to get a hold of her? Because I'm the first in line.
Dr. Detective, that's that clip. I mean, I've done that. I was looking for my phone the other day, and I was holding it in my hand. But what about that particular exchange? That she notices the phone suddenly.
Right. So it sounded like they kind of asked her the initial question of, finding the phone and did you check the phone for notifications? And then she kind of changes her story of, oh, I called it, or I called her. So they're trying to lock her into a statement of obviously some information they know or the forensic data on the phone they're already aware of. So that can be good and or bad, contingent upon what comes later, or if they confront her ultimately, or if there's some other messages. Again, that could have been done intentionally. So not knowing the whole scope of how much data they have and how that factors in. But yeah, it's very interesting. Her change of answer, changing her story, like literally a minute later.
Yeah. I mean, she's changed it about what time, as we said earlier.
Right.
Definitely some inconsistencies here. Two more clips. I'm going to play this out. We'll get comments. We'll do some quick true crime news of the week, and then we will call it a day. Here we go.
Anyone ever complained to you about believing that Stephan had taken her Christmas money?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Christmas money went missing, and we were both. I don't even know how to explain this. We had collected all of her envelopes with Christmas money and consolidated into one. I'll put all her money into one.
Yep.
And then I said, I will put this somewhere safe. And I thought I had put it in my nightstand. A few days later comes around, whatever. We start looking for it or asking for it or something like that, and we can't find it. We can't find it at all.
So let me just narrow it down. Did she accuse Stephan of taking it?
I'm not sure if she did directly.
Let me just stop that there, because in a previous clip, Phil, I wanted to ask you, he made a joke about like the NFL with commercials or whatever, because of time constraints. I'm going to pare this down. And he just said that again. I don't remember the exact words he used, but he's basically like cutting the interview for time. Let me just take it back like a hair here. Hang on a sec.
So let me just narrow it down. Did she accuse Stephan of taking it?
Right there. Let me just narrow it down. And he goes right to yes or no question. Is that like detective interviewing 101 gone wrong? Phil Waters.
Well, I don't know that anything about this interview has been 101 gone right, but I mean, he's made some points and she said some things. I just don't think he has the capacity to understand.
At any time, if you're doing an interview, Phil, do the words, I got to get to the grocery store, let's hurry this up, ever come out of your mouth? My wife needs a gallon of milk, I got to go, so make it quick. I assume that's not something that you say.
No, and that just goes to the shortcomings here. In fact, I will tell anybody in my class that if you have a distraction of some kind, if you've got to be at an extra job, or you've got to be at one of your kids' recital, or you've got to do something else, do not go into that interview room. Because you're not the person that needs to be in there, because you'll do exactly what he's doing. So he has no patience. He's not really listening to what she's saying. He's hearing a lot of stuff, but he's not really listening. And look, the interviewer time is on your side. I've been in interviews that went for 6 hours, 4 hours. if they're willing to sit in there and talk with me, I'm willing to sit in there and listen to them. So the last thing you want is somebody who doesn't want to go the long.
Now Uncle Phil froze up, so I'm going to keep playing it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Real quick,
Go,
go ahead.
go ahead, Troy. No, go ahead, Troy.
No, I was just going to chime in on that. Yeah, the interesting thing I was wondering was that he said they wanted to be first in line. Is that for the game, or what context is that?
That I am not. I
So,
don't
yeah,
know.
I was wondering, was it her saying they were trying to get to a game? But even with that, it's, I guess maybe my takeaway was maybe he's trying to show that there's a lack of compassion. Like, what takes precedence over your child and getting solving this or getting some understanding why it happened, right? A game, a super whatever, right? So I know everyone's a different fan of whatever they like, but what's
this is
take
also,
precedence
by the
over your
way, like
child?
this is like basically 2 months after her daughter is no
Okay,
longer
gotcha,
with
yeah.
us. If it was me, I mean, I wouldn't even be able to talk. I mean, 2 months later, I'd be like
Right.
crawled up in a ball somewhere, hysterically crying. She just seems so, I don't know, unaffected, I guess. But let me keep playing this one out, and we'll
Sure.
get the comments on the back end.
I'm not sure if she did directly. We both had the suspicion, but we're like, no, could he have? No, I don't think so. But I eventually found that money.
Okay, I was just going to, how did the mystery end? All right, so you had just started this job at Disney Coronado Springs like a week or two earlier, is that right?
Yes.
And your sister and other family members would help with Maddie getting to school because of your job?
Yes, my mom, and my sister, yes.
Okay. Why is it that now Stephan on February 26th is coming up to help as opposed to any of your family members helping getting Madeline to school?
I had asked for him to come and help me because I think I was working a lot of night shifts or like really late shifts. And I just wanted the opportunity to see Maddie, like, because I wanted to spend more time with my daughter throughout the week while I was working, versus had she had stayed at my mom's, I wouldn't have seen her all week.
Okay.
So that was just me wanting to see her and spend time with her.
Did Madeline stay at your mom's house fairly frequently?
Every few weekends here and there, like just for the weekend kind of thing.
So like if she described it to her friends as like her second home and like kind of offer up it's better jacuzzi and pool, does that sound like that's the place?
Yes.
Where does Madeline sleep when she's over at your mom's?
She will sleep in bed with my mom.
Okay. Did she ever have sleepovers? Like have friends come over and sleep over?
Slumber parties, no.
Did she ever go and attend any?
No.
Is there any particular reason? I mean, she's a 12-year-old girl on the cusp of being 13.
Yeah, I've been very uncomfortable with sleepovers just because I know what can happen. Anything can happen in a sleepover.
Boom. Phil Waters. I mean, she just basically, that's a confession, I think. I mean, she just said, I know what can happen during sleepovers. Why did you make that head motion, Phil?
Well, my question there would be is, what do you know that happens on sleepovers? Well, look, tell me about your experience. I mean, why would you think that way? The normal course, look, I got grandkids that are about that age. I mean, they go to sleepovers all the time. So my question would be, that's the way I would express it to her. I would say, look, I've got grandkids. My kids, when they were growing up, my daughters went to sleepovers. What are you aware of that happens at sleepovers that I'm not? Explain that to me. I want to get in her head. I want to find out. I mean, saying something like that to me, that's just very strange. That she's using this as a reason to not allow Maddie to go to sleepovers. So I'm curious as to who was actually the one that wasn't allowing Maddie to go to sleepovers. Because that turd, the boyfriend, we already now know what he's already doing to Maddie. Is the fear there that she's going to go to a sleepover and she's going to tell one of those girls, this is what's going on at my house. I think this is just a way to keep Maddie isolated. And I don't know that. I'm just saying that this phrase, this reason, to me, just screams that it's about control over Maddie and who she's associating with, and who she's associating with when she's not with them, either one of them.
It's to me that just screamed, I guess, silent. Oh, not a silent, but like like a kind of a confession to knowing that stuff, at least in the bedroom, has been not kosher. But let me keep playing this out. One more after that. Here we go.
Well, then you can be the host house like we kind of were. You never hosted any sleepovers for her friends?
For her friends, no.
Did she ask about it?
Yeah, she did ask.
Was it probably a source of contention or arguments?
It was, I guess what was the source of argument is she wanted to really sleep over her best friend's house, and I just kept saying, no, you never know what could happen. I don't know the dad, I don't know the brother, I don't know anybody there. Like, I don't know what could happen to you. So, just afraid of her getting assaulted.
Okay. Did Madeline do her own laundry?
Yeah.
Did she cook for herself?
I was teaching her how to make a few things, so I mean, yeah, she could, I guess.
Okay. What's her normal routine for getting ready for bed?
We give her her meds.
I'm sorry, take your time.
We get ready for bed. I'd give her her medication. She would get in the shower.
Take a long shower, I understand.
Like an hour plus, yeah.
Okay.
She loved it.
That's that clip. So at least we're seeing a bit of emotion here, finally, where they had to even stop the tape. But Phil, why are you shaking your head?
You talking to me?
Talking to you, Phil Waters. Why are you shaking your head?
Well, you talking about the emotion there at the end a little bit?
No, I mean you were shaking, so I'm leaving it open ended, Phil Waters.
Well, I'm just wondering when when Maddie wants to do these sleepovers, and her reasoning is, I don't know the dad, I don't know the mom. I was worried that she might get assaulted. Where the heck does that come from?
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, this interview, this prosecutor, I mean, he swing and a miss so many times. Because she says a lot of stuff that he needs to take a deep dive into, but I guess he's worrying about getting in line at the grocery, whatever he's concerned about. But
what's the deal with a 1 hour shower too? That's sounds kind of like a long shower.
Well, knowing what we know now, the 1 hour shower is after that jackass has done something to her. That's what a 1 hour shower is about.
Wow. I mean, yeah, this is what I was
saying. And that's another thing. This guy doesn't even.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not even in his wheelhouse. That's why you don't have prosecutors.
I'm like Will J. I just said why the shower.
Suspects or witnesses.
Right.
Yeah. And look, Buttercup, why did Maddie stay in the shower for an hour? Why was she scared? Was she scared to come out? Best Nancy, obviously women way more intuitive. 1 hour to escape, poor baby. Exactly, Phil. Yeah, I guess she was terrified. Troy Looney, your take on that?
Yeah, I was going to jump in there. Yeah, my thought first was, she's escaping, or she's, obviously the obvious trauma, probably in the shower crying a lot, I imagine, as well. And just, trying to transition to even get out and get to bed if she even wanted to do that. I'm sure, I think there was some research mentioned she wanted to run away at some point in time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, how could mom be so, cognizant of or aware of something could happen, but you're not aware when it's already happening in the home? So that's a shame.
Man, when you I mean, it's so disturbing what Ned Smith is saying, but it's true. She's trying to wash him off of her, likely. I mean, and they found, I think, thousands of photos. And by the way, Jen Soto had a roommate who only spoke Spanish, and police interviewed her and informed her that Stephan was filming her from underneath the door. So she's also the one that said that there was weird stuff going on the night that Maddie went missing. But this is the final one. This is the sleeping arrangement, and here we go.
Sometime in 2022, but I'm not sure when.
Okay. It's my understanding that it's December of 2022 that you and Stephan kind of break up,
Yes.
but he still remains in the townhome.
Yes.
Why is that?
So even though we were broken up, I still considered him one of my best friends. I wanted to give him the opportunity to live there, and he had gotten a job at Disney that was doing well.
Okay.
And I didn't want him to continue to lose that.
I'm being dragged to Disney at the end of March. This guy is working. I mean, literally, it must just be the biggest haven in the world for pedophiles.
Because he had been struggling for a long time to get a job or do anything because his own mental health issues.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give him a chance to do something, be something. So
Did he pay rent?
yes,
How much rent did he pay?
$600 a month.
So in December of 2022, kind of when the breakup happens, prior to that, what were the sleeping arrangements in your home? Was he sleeping in your bedroom as a couple?
Yes.
So who's in bedroom number 4, if anybody?
That's that. We have there Dr. Troy Looney, Dr. Detective, sort of benign, but just icky feeling there. What'd you make of that last clip?
Again, so she has a lot of pauses, and obviously she's thinking about what she's going to say. But Phil can attest to this. Sometimes when you get to, I think the prosecutor missed a lot. They're missing the clues. They're missing specific details that she should expand upon and should be asked. Tell me more about this specifically before we move on. And when you miss those kind of clues and details, that could be why she's sighing. We like to, there's a term I call, you build the relationship, you lead them down a pathway or offer them a theme essentially. And then there's a thing, what I call getting them on the ropes, right? You take them over a plateau or to a plateau where they're almost ready to give you everything. So that could be a distraction or her being frustrated, but there are certain key statements that were made that should have been expanded upon, and details or more context of what she's explaining should have been mentioned, should have been asked about, or she should have been interviewed about. So maybe that will come later. But that was very there's a lot there, a lot of clues there that detectives would see that the prosecutor missed or should have seen.
Dr. Detective's got his own show coming on the second channel, True Crime Talk, coming to you. I think the Geo Profiler is coming up right after this show, which I guess is why Julie's giving me time stuff. I just put that. I am becoming a detective in my own right. Phil Waters, you get the final word when it comes to interviews. You just witnessed what you say was a swing and a miss by Prosecutor Will J. Final thoughts on the interviews we saw, and then we'll fly through some true crime talk. I mean, through some true crime stories of the week. Sorry.
Well, this last little blip here, more missed opportunities. I don't know that he asked the question. Maybe I missed it, but he says, I think I said something like, I became aware that you all broke up and blah, blah, blah. Well, what's the next logical question? Why did you break up?
Right.
And then she goes on and talks about other stuff and says, and he's got some mental health issues. Really? And what are those mental health issues? Explain those. I mean, I was fascinated at what she was giving him, and he didn't have enough snap to pursue what she was giving him. So, like I said, this is a missed opportunity. I don't know that they accomplished what they were seeking to do. And I don't know that she told them anything that they don't already know, because they didn't delve into certain aspects of that interview that they should have when they had the opportunity.
Right.
At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
I want to jump in real quick on that too. Thanks, Phil. One question I have is like, why is this interview being shared and trial's not even started? So why are we sharing these details? I mean,
that's a great point, and that came up the other day with the Alexander brothers, 3 brothers from the Miami area accused of hideous sex crimes against at least 42 women have come forward. They released the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office released 3 interviews with victims, and I can't really understand why they did that, but I think, I mean, they were obviously pixelated and voice altered. I asked a criminal defense attorney, and I think it was Tim Jansen. He said that they're just trying to basically play to a potential jury pool, but I thought it was odd that they're releasing interviews of alleged victims of these guys. So there's that. Phil's looking at me incredulous, but that is true.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. So on to weird true crime stories of the week. Julie Frew, let me know, because I always screw this up. When we're done here in like 9 minutes or less, is it automatically redirected or Space Coast? Can you let me know? I'm just gonna probably, I don't know, ruin it for everybody. But everybody, if you want, you're going to be redirected to the Geo Profilers show right after this. Okay, true crime stories of the week. Phil Waters. This is an ex-con. He is now locked up without bond, and the reason is, and I'm curious if this either surprises you or if you've ever heard of this before, for a bologna sandwich battery. This is in Florida, of course. The defendant's name, the suspect, Octavius Chandler, 29-year-old. He's a convicted felon. He got into it with his stepfather. The stepfather wanted him to lower the PS5 PlayStation. It was too loud. The stepfather is 62 years old. At that point, this gentleman, Octavius, decides to take his bologna sandwich and smash it over this guy's head, and he is filming it. He was uninjured, but he had previously pleaded no contest to choking his sister while playing a video game. It's probably going to happen to my son, by the way, because he's addicted, and I got to get this kid off of his friggin' PS5. But anyway, Phil, have you ever heard of someone going to jail that is not even a misdemeanor because of bologna battery assault? Also, why do you spell bologna, Bologna, if it's bologna? But go ahead, Phil.
Well, that's Bologna.
Bologna, correct. Bologna, maybe, but not bologna. But
pronounced bologna.
Yeah, it's weird. Have you ever heard of a bologna assault?
Well, oh gosh, that is funny when they use food for a weapon of some kind. I don't think you can weaponize the bologna. I don't think you could stretch that to be defined as a deadly weapon. So obviously he's being arrested for. I'm assuming, I don't know what in Texas it sounds like it's going to be either a Class A assault, bodily injury, because the person is claiming some measure of pain as a result of being smacked in the face with the bologna sandwich, or it's a simple assault by contact, which is a Class C. So whatever it is, whenever you get food involved in acts of violence, it always calls for a moment to pause. Troy was talking about some people that killed over what was the food?
Arby's sandwich.
Arby's.
Yes.
Which I can kind of understand a little bit.
Okay.
I like Arby's. I might, if you're jacking with my roast beef sandwich, I might, and my potato cakes, I might go off on you.
Yeah.
I had one that was similar. It was a bunch of Cuban guys that were living in an apartment together, and they had put up this wonderful chicken recipe with this Cuban sauce.
Okay.
And the last remaining chicken leg, the drumstick, was at issue. And so we went into the parking lot to determine who was going to get the last drumstick, and engaged in a fight. And the person that was losing the fight had also brought a blade with him, and because he thought he was probably going to lose the fight, and he juked the guy that was winning the fight and would have won the drumstick, presumably, and killed it. And then he ran away, but he came back in the middle of the scene, which was pretty cool too. And but whatever this, and we did have the evidence, by the way. We did have the evidence. So the drumstick was still sitting in the pan with this unique, tasteful Cuban sauce on it. So we bagged it and tagged it, and there you go. But yeah, it's people. Well, it's like I've always said, right? Anybody's capable,
right,
of any act. Me, Troy, Joel,
at any time.
Black Widower, anybody is capable of any act under the right set of circumstances.
Right.
And
we
so
tagged
some of
Darby
these people that are really provoked by their culinary perspectives, there you go.
By the way, I might kill over a McDonald's Coca-Cola. They have the best Coke, best Coca-Cola. Anyway, this next story, we've got to be off here in exactly 6 minutes because there's another show, so I have to do that. But this is Troy out of Texas. It's either Texas or Florida always. It was a TikTok video that got a gazillion views. Everyone was laughing. They thought it was funny when a 25-year-old man in wherever Port Arthur is decided to use his infant baby to wipe snow off his car. There was just snow in Texas. So he used his baby, and there was questions on TikTok. Is that a real baby? Is that a fake baby? And it turns out it was a real baby because the police went out there. And this is why, Dr. Detective, I have said for years, social media kills, because number one, it's making people beyond stupid. And number two, I think it's going to be the end of our culture and our society. How seriously would you take a call where you are told that the person is wiping his windshield with a baby?
Well, we have to report whatever they want to document. So it starts with reporting, right? So, I mean, we write it up, and, you know, again, as most officers will tell you, you can't make this stuff up, right? We all have stories and stories and stories. And by the way, I had an assault. The guy got assaulted with a roll of bologna or bologna, whatever. And the guy's name was Mr. Bologna. So
no way.
Can't make it up. True story.
Is that true? Is that true?
Yeah, true story at 7-Eleven. They got into it. The clerk got into it with the customer and over the lunch meat, and he wanted it sliced a certain way. And actually, it was the store owner that smacked the guy with the bologna, and his name was Mr. Bologna, the clerk, the suspect.
I hope I hope he got away with it. I don't know.
But yeah, this guy with the baby situation, I mean, that's just ridiculous. But I mean, you know, is a child injured? Was it frostbite? You know, those things factor in. It's just child endangering still, regardless. So, I mean, common sense, if we could sell that, we'd be billionaires, right? But
yeah, people are
maybe I'd get a Ferrari if I could sell common sense.
Phil Waters, the next story here is a beauty. A Georgia healthcare worker facing charges over yet another viral TikTok video. She wanted to get views, so what did she do? She began twerking atop a patient at a hospital with physical disabilities. And I don't know that she was charged with a crime, but she was summarily dismissed from her career as a nurse. She was twerking. Phil, have you ever twerked?
You're talking about the Miley Cyrus nonsense?
Yeah, I don't know where it started.
Is that where it all originated from?
It's when they shake their booty.
Twerking?
Yeah, it's the booty shake.
Well,
And look
I
at
can
Edward
say I've
Murphy.
been twerked off, but you know, I mean, people have no humility, and they have no respect, and this is just an example of it. I mean, what in the world would provoke this? This is a person that's an employee at this place.
Yes, a nurse, like not I think she's like a nurse's assistant,
like a
nurse
caregiver kind of thing.
Home
Yeah,
health,
she's only
yeah.
19. Yeah,
Wow.
19 years old. Yeah.
19 years old, and we're putting her in charge of taking care of
People with physical disabilities.
Yeah, I saw that video.
And
Like
she
they're in like
thought
the
this was a
bathtub.
good idea, I guess. Well, you know what? And she's up there with one of these people with the disability twerking with them.
Oh no, they can't twerk because they're disabled. She's twerking on their head,
They're
basically.
like in the
On their
bathtub,
what?
right? They're like, sorry.
She was like
twerking on their what?
She was kind of doing the booty dance on this patient's head. I don't know if it was a man or a woman.
On their head.
Yeah, in that
Is that what you
vicinity.
just said?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes, yeah.
Look, I mean, maybe in her mind, she thought this was a service of some kind to help this person with a disability. But so let's give her a little. Let's show her a little compassion, a little grace here. I would categorize this as good initiative, poor judgment.
There. All right, we got to be off the air in 1 minute, so I'm just going to run through this. An 88-year-old man in the home of Brian Laundrie, Northport, Florida, 88 years old, murders his wife, stages it as a suicide. My question to you, at 88 years old, like, how do you even have the energy to do it? Last but not least, Phil, I got to keep you short on this one, but I would like your response. Finally, thank God, because I was waiting for this for 20 years. It's been 20 years in the making. And the Queen of Versailles, as she is known, the wife of David Siegel, her 90,000 square foot Florida home is now near completion. It is named after Versailles in France. 90,000 square feet. What would you do with a 90,000 square foot home, Phil? And then you got to say goodbye, and we got to say goodbye, and I'll talk to you offline.
Sell it.
There you go. Love you, America. Love you, Phil and Dr. Troy Looney. Stay on here.
Great being with you, Troy. Enjoyed it.
You're getting redirected to the debut of the Geo Profiler on True Crime Talk, the best talk in all of true crime.